When Clara discovered her husband's affair, she didn't scream, beg, or break down. She invited his mistress's husband to dinner at the same romantic table. What unfolded wasn't just revenge, it was a masterclass in reclaiming dignity, identity, and a future built on truth. This is not just a betrayal story. It's a woman's quiet, devastating rise from the ruins of trust. My name is Clara Whitmore, and for most of my adult life, I believed in structure both in the classroom and at home. At 41, I lectured on business administration at Metro Denver University, a place where the rules were clear, expectations met, and performance measurable. My marriage to Lucas had always felt like another kind of syllabus. We met young, built a life with neat boundaries and mutual respect, and moved into a suburban neighborhood where hedges were trimmed to perfection and smiles masked deeper truths. To everyone else, we were the model couple, stable, professional, enviably composed, but no one sees the hairline fractures until the glass finally shatters. That Thursday evening had begun like so many others. Lucas was in the shower, steam billowing from under the bathroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through a syllabus draft for an upcoming semester, when his phone chimed. Just once, a soft, unassuming ping. The screen lit up, casting a glow on the nightstand where it lay face up. I had never invaded his privacy. Not in 17 years. Trust, I always told my students, was the backbone of every relationship, personal or professional. But there was something in the air that night, something colder than the tiles under my bare feet. I reached for the phone. The message was brief, almost laughably so. Table for two confirmed at Lumiere. Friday at 7:30 p.m. window seat as requested. She'll love it. My fingers went numb. Lumiere wasn't just any restaurant. It was the place we had once dreamed of, celebrating our 10th anniversary, a fantasy we abandoned when he claimed work had pulled him to New York. I had never been there. He had, with someone else. My thumb hovered above the screen. I didn't intend to unlock it, but my muscle memory moved before rational thought. 4 digits. Our wedding date. Still the passcode. The phone opened. And so did a parallel life I didn't know my husband was living. Messages, photos, voice notes. Nearly a year of daily exchanges with Sophie Walker, a 20-something from his firm's communications department. She was blonde, energetic, and familiar with the exact creases of his smile. They messaged with the intimacy of soulmates. Good morning texts, inside jokes, photographs from a weekend in Santa Fe, showing them in bed, on hikes, sharing wine. His eyes lit up in ways I hadn't seen since the first 5 years of our marriage. I didn't cry. Not immediately. What I felt was something more primal, a sharp, cold emptiness where trust used to live. Like a rug yanked from under my reality. My pulse pounded as I placed the phone back where it was, positioning it carefully on the nightstand. I folded my hands in my lap. Lucas's voice floated out from the bathroom. Have you seen my blue tie? Second drawer, I said, my voice even, distant. That night, I lay beside him, my back turned, eyes wide open while his breathing steadied into sleep. I thought about the missed calls, the late nights, the way he began complimenting me less and traveling more. I remembered the faint traces of perfume that didn't belong to me and the way he now avoided eye contact when speaking about his day. The signs were always there. I kissed him goodbye the next morning. Just like always, good luck with the Japanese clients today, I said. He smiled and thanked me. Once the door closed, I stood still for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called I requested a 3-day leave. The reason? Family emergency. That wasn't entirely a lie. I didn't need time to mourn. I needed time to plan. Lucas had lit the match. Now I would build the fire. I sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun spilling across cold coffee and a granite counter that had once symbolized achievement. I opened his calendar. Lucas was always meticulous. His Lumiere reservation was noted Friday, 7:30 p.m., window seat, pre-ordered wine, all arranged like clockwork. I typed in the name, Sophie Walker. His firm's employee directory listed her as an internal communications associate. Her social media was public. One scroll through her feed told me she was the kind of woman who took mirror selfies and posted motivational quotes in gold script. She was also married. Ethan Walker, her husband, was an executive architect at a prestigious Denver design firm. Handsome, talented, probably devoted. The kind of man who didn't deserve what was being done to him. I stared at his profile photo for a long time. Then I opened my university email. Subject: Guest lecture invitation, urban design and business strategy. Dear Mr. Ethan Walker, my name is Clara Whitmore, a lecturer at Metro Denver University. We're currently hosting a guest series on urban innovation and came across your recent work in the Rivergate Business District. I'd love to discuss the possibility of featuring your insights in our program. If you're available, I've arranged a dinner meeting for Friday at Lumiere, 7:30 p.m. Please let me know if this works for your schedule. Sincerely, Clara Whitmore. I hit send. 2 hours later, he replied, "Thank you, Miss Whitmore. I'm honored. Friday at Lumiere works perfectly. Looking forward to our conversation." I stared at the message, my heart a battlefield of sorrow and precision. He didn't know yet, but he would. Not through confrontation, but clarity. I called the restaurant. "Good evening," said the hostess. "I'd like to reserve a table for two this Friday at 7:30 p.m. near the window if possible. Ideally, near a reservation under Hamilton and Rothman. We're colleagues and would like to be close." She noted my request. I smiled faintly. Everything was set. Friday arrived. I wore the teal silk dress Lucas once called too bold for formal dinners. My hair was swept up. My heels clicked with intent. This wasn't a dinner. This was a reckoning. I arrived 20 minutes early and was seated with a clear view of the other window table. Lucas and Sophie hadn't arrived. When Ethan entered, I recognized him instantly. He was taller than in photos, with the tired eyes of someone overworked but not unkind. We greeted each other with a handshake and polite small talk, and then they walked in. Lucas is in the blazer I gifted him last birthday. Sophie in a red dress too loud for the setting, laughing as if the night belonged to her. Ethan didn't notice them at first. I did. I watched every gesture, every glance. Lucas leaned in. Sophie giggled. The wine was poured, and then his eyes met mine. He froze. I excused myself. In the hallway, I encountered Sophie. Her face paled when she saw me. "You're Clara," she said, voice barely audible, "and you're holding my husband's hand under the table while your husband sits 10 steps away." She tried to protest. I raised an eyebrow. "If this isn't the perfect place, when would you prefer?" "Candlelight and lies go well together, don't they?" Lucas appeared behind her. "Clara, what are you doing here?" "Calling Ethan," I said flatly. He arrived a moment later, confused, concerned. "This is Lucas," I said. "My husband, and that's your wife." The air cracked like ice. Sophie's lip trembled. Ethan looked from her to Lucas, realization dawning like a curse. I walked away, heels echoing behind me. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The silence after the reveal lingered like smoke from a fire freshly extinguished. Even as I walked away from that candlelit battlefield, the echoes of disbelief and betrayal clung to my heels like shadows. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The damage was done. The curtain lifted. There was no way for them to crawl back into the lie they'd so carefully constructed. I returned to my table, ordered a fresh martini, and sipped it slowly. Ethan didn't follow immediately. I imagined him standing there, watching Sophie cry, trying to process how the ground had shifted beneath him. A few minutes later, he slid into the chair across from me, pale and hollow-eyed. He didn't speak, and I didn't force him to. We sat like that, a fragile stillness between us, two strangers tied together by one cruel truth. When the waiter came to check on us, I asked for a private room. "Please," I added, "we need some privacy." Within minutes, we were escorted to a quiet space with soft lighting and walls that didn't echo. I asked for the other table, Lucas and Sophie's, to be joined with ours. When they arrived, I was already seated, my hands folded neatly on the table like a judge about to hand down a sentence. Lucas looked different in this light, disheveled, pale, cornered. Sophie sat beside him, her mascara smudged, her red dress suddenly looking garish and loud. Across from them, Ethan stared into nothing, his hands clenched into tight fists. Lucas opened his mouth first. Clara, No, I said calmly. You don't get to start. Not tonight. I turned to Sophie. You first. She looked startled, then lowered her eyes. I never meant to hurt anyone. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Ethan's voice was quiet but razor sharp. Then what was it supposed to be? A secret romance in the shadows? A fairy tale where no one gets hurt but the people who trusted you. I felt lost, Sophie whispered. At home, in my marriage. Lucas listened. He understood me. I laughed a soft, bitter sound. Funny, that's what I thought he did with me for the last 17 years. Lucas finally looked at me, his eyes wet. Clara, I made a mistake, a terrible one. I don't even know who I became, but this isn't me. I raised an eyebrow. It's not? Because the messages, the photos, the trips, they say otherwise. You became the kind of man who lies in bed next to his wife while texting another woman. Sweet dreams. He flinched. I didn't know how to stop. You didn't want to, I said simply. You just never thought you'd get caught. The room was heavy with silence. No one reached for the wine. No one dared to speak. I placed a hotel key on the table. I'll be staying at the Celeste Hotel tonight. Room 1203. Lucas, I suggest you find another place to sleep. I'll return to the house Monday. You shouldn't be there. Lucas's face collapsed. Clara, please don't do this. We can fix it. We've been through so much. Exactly, I said, standing. And you chose to burn it down. Sophie reached for Ethan's hand. He pulled away. I loved you, Ethan said quietly, and I thought you loved me back. But maybe you just loved attention, or the thrill of deception. Either way, I can't follow you down this path. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I know, he replied, but some things can be undone. I turned and left, heels clicking sharply against marble. Outside, the night was cool, and the city sparkled around me like nothing had happened, but something had. Everything had. I crossed the street and checked into the Celeste Hotel, the lobby quiet and dim. I took the elevator to the 12th floor, unlocked the door to my suite, and stepped inside. The room was beautiful, modern, clean, tranquil. I walked to the window, the lights of Denver stretching out before me. For a moment, I stood in silence, then sank onto the bed. The tears came all at once, hot, aching, and unstoppable. I cried for 17 years of shared holidays, lazy Sundays, whispered dreams. I cried for every time I'd looked the other way, for every excuse I'd accepted, for the woman I'd become, afraid to ask questions because I didn't want the answers. A knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hesitated, then looked through the peephole. It was Ethan. He looked lost, his coat slightly wrinkled, his eyes tired. I'm sorry to show up like this, he said when I opened the door. I didn't know where else to go. I let him in. We sat in armchairs by the window, two figures surrounded by quiet. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, time stood still. I keep thinking, Ethan said finally, how you managed to sit through that dinner, knowing everything. I smiled faintly, because I needed to see it. Needed him to see me seeing it. There's power in silence, power in exposure. He nodded. I didn't see it coming. Not even a little. Me neither, I admitted. But sometimes the truth has to be dragged into the light. We talked for hours about broken vows, lost years, and hidden truths. He told me Sophie had once been his muse. I told him Lucas had once been my anchor. But both had turned out to be the very people who set us adrift. When he finally stood to leave, he looked at me with something like understanding. If you need a friend, I'm here, I nodded. Thank you, Ethan. Tonight? You understood me better than my husband did in years. He left, and I stood at the window, watching him disappear down the hallway. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift off my chest. I had faced the truth, and I had survived. Tomorrow would be another day, and I would be ready. The following morning, light spilled into the Celeste Hotel suite like a quiet apology from the universe. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, wrapped in a cotton robe, sipping black coffee that had long gone cold. The tears had stopped sometime around AM, but a dull ache still sat behind my eyes. 17 years of marriage unraveled in one night. That truth wasn't something you simply slept off. I showered, packed my overnight bag, and left the suite without looking back. The doorman hailed me a cab, and I gave him the address of the house that was no longer a home. Lucas and I had built a lively white picket fence, his and hers closets, a garden I used to tend on weekends, but all of it now felt like a set piece in a play whose script had been rewritten behind my back. He was already waiting when I arrived. Lucas sat in the living room, unshaven and slumped on the edge of the couch like a defendant awaiting a verdict. His tie was gone, the shirt wrinkled. The man who once stood so tall now looked shrunken beneath the weight of truth. "Clara," he said, rising quickly, "we need to talk." I placed my purse down on the entry table with deliberate calm. "Then talk. I know I betrayed you," he began, voice cracking. "I know there's no excuse, but we've been together nearly 2 decades. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counted," I replied, "until it didn't." His eyes searched mine for softness and found none. "I've ended things with Sophie. She left the city, moved back to Santa Barbara. Couldn't handle the fallout at work." I blinked. "Good. One less secret to hide." Lucas's expression twisted. "You told people." "I told the truth," I said. "To your colleagues, your friends, your family. I stopped being your alibi." He stared at me, jaw clenched. "You've ruined my reputation." "No," I said softly. "You did. I just stopped helping you protect the illusion." He stepped closer, desperation clawing into his voice. "Clara, I love you. That never changed." I stepped back. "If you love someone, you don't treat them like a backup plan. You don't look at another woman the way you used to look at me and pretend that love is still intact." Lucas dropped to his knees, head in his hands. "She meant nothing. It was a mistake." "No," I whispered. "It was a series of choices, one after another, and now I'm making mine." I walked past him, grabbed the folder from my purse, and placed it on the coffee table. "What's this?" he asked, voice hollow. "Divorce papers," I said. I already spoke to a lawyer. He looked like someone had stolen the ground from beneath him. "Please, don't do this." "You already did," I replied and left the room. The next few weeks were filled with the dullness of administrative pain. Lawyer appointments, asset divisions, the closing of shared accounts. Lucas sent flowers, long texts, and voice messages filled with apologies, but I ignored them. Sometimes silence speaks louder than forgiveness. 3 weeks later, a mutual friend told me Lucas had been spotted with Sophie again at a cafe in the suburbs. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't even feel hurt anymore, just empty. That night, I received one final message from Lucas. "I tried moving on with her, but I don't see you in her eyes. She doesn't smile at me like you used to. I miss you." I stared at the screen for a full minute before deleting the message. I didn't respond. Some ghosts aren't worth talking to. Spring arrived early. Morning light began waking me before alarms did. I moved into a cozy apartment with warm wooden floors and a small balcony draped in plants. It smelled like peace. My days became mine again. I returned to teaching, started a photography class on Saturdays, rediscovered the joy of doing nothing. And Ethan? He never disappeared. He started joining me for weekend coffee. First, it was just conversations about work and therapy. Then it became shared walks, movie nights, and long drives through the mountains. We never rushed. We didn't name what was growing between us, but we both knew it was healing, and it was real. One Sunday afternoon, we were walking near the river after an open-air concert. The sky was painted with the soft blush of dusk. Ethan paused, looking at me with the gentlest seriousness. "I'm not asking for something grand," he said. "No declarations, no timelines, just a chance to build something honest. No lies, no secrets, just us." I looked into his eyes, full of quiet strength, and nodded. "I'm not ready to love the old way, but if it's your way, I think I already started." He didn't kiss me. He didn't need to. He just reached for my hand and held it like a promise. That night, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because for the first time, I wasn't holding onto pain. I was holding something far more precious. My truth. A year after that fateful night at Lumiere, I received an invitation to Professor Martha Benson's retirement celebration. She had been my PhD advisor, my mentor, and at one point, the closest thing I had to a second mother. The event was being held at Hotel Lyrie, a familiar venue, known for its elegance and serenity. I hadn't attended a formal event in a while, but something told me I needed to go. I arrived early, dressed in a navy blue cocktail dress with my mother's pearl earrings brushing gently against my neck. In my hand, I carried a carefully wrapped gift, a rare first edition of a book Martha had always adored. I wasn't looking for anything beyond a quiet night of shared memories and soft conversations, until I saw him. Lucas. He stood near the wine table, thinner than I remembered, grayer at the temples. His suit was tailored, but the confidence he used to wear like cologne was gone. When our eyes met across the room, there was no animosity, just silence stretching between two people who once shared a life. He walked toward me slowly, holding a glass of red wine that sloshed slightly from his trembling hand. "Clara," he said, voice rougher, older. "I didn't think you'd be here. I didn't think I'd see you either." I replied softly. He gave a faint, almost apologetic smile. "Professor Benson is the last person who still talks to me." I nodded. "She always believed in people, even when they didn't deserve it." Lucas looked at me, truly looked, as if trying to read the story behind my calm eyes. After a long pause, he spoke again. "I owe you an apology. Not because you need to hear it, but because I need to say it. After everything blew up, I lost more than I expected. Not just you. I lost who I was. I hope you find peace," I said sincerely. He took a breath, eyes glancing down at his glass. "Are you okay now?" "Yes," I said with conviction. "I'm rebuilding, and I'm not alone." As if summoned, Ethan entered the room in a charcoal shirt and sleek blazer. When he saw me, he smiled, the kind of smile that makes the noise of the world disappear. Lucas followed my gaze. "He's a good man," Lucas said quietly. "You deserve a fresh start." I placed my hand over my chest. "Once shattered, now whole." Lucas gave me a small nod and stepped back, giving me space not just in the room, but in life. Later, Ethan and I sat together at a corner table during the celebration. We clinked glasses, talked with colleagues, and even shared a slow dance beneath the amber chandelier. The night was soft. No drama, no ghosts, just quiet healing. When we stepped out into the cool evening air, the city glimmered like a dream. Ethan reached for my hand, warm and steady. "You know," I said, gazing at the stars, "there was a time I thought betrayal was the end of my story." Ethan squeezed my hand gently. "And now, I think it was just a turning point. A painful pause, so I could finally walk towards something better." He said nothing, only smiled. And together, we walked on, not chasing a future, but creating it. 1 year after the storm, I was no longer the woman who sacrificed everything to keep a broken marriage alive. I was Clara, independent, steady, and whole. I didn't just survive betrayal. I transformed because of it. I learned to place my self-worth above blind love, and in doing so, I found something far greater than a perfect marriage. I found peace. I chose myself, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back.